Were the Toronto Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner really close on a new contract in the last couple of weeks? And was it blocked or denied by Brendan Shanahan? We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Welcome back here to Top Shelf Hockey. Now we have some interesting news coming from some different media sources tonight indicating that the Toronto Maple Leafs and Mitch Marner were very close to a new contract here in the past couple of weeks, but it may have been blocked or denied by Brendan Shanahan. Now I'm going to first of all show you the information that came through Twitter from Satir Khan, who claims he was speaking with Rick Dhaliwal, both Vancouver media members, and here's what he had to say. He says, talking with Rick Dhaliwal today, a source told him the Leafs and Marner were close to a deal 2 weeks ago, but Brendan Shanahan didn't approve it. Lots of rumors circling around RFAs these days. So certainly some very interesting information there. Obviously, as we know, Kyle Dubas and Mitch Marner's camp have been discussing a new contract here for quite some time, and there seems to be some great deal of differences on what Mitch Marner should be getting for a new contract, which is why we don't have one as of yet. Now, some other information came out on Twitter today from some other sources as well, with some other minor updates here in the situation. This came from Dave McCarthy. McCarthy says, Marner says he'd skip Leafs camp without contract, but would he sign an offer sheet? And of course he links to his new article for NHL.com as part of that tweet here as well. Obviously Mitch Marner right now, in case you're not aware, is having a big charity event. So we had a big media scrum today. All kinds of members of the hockey media there to ask questions. And of course it's hard not for them to press the question around contract and how things were going. All kinds of rumors have been speculating around how the negotiations are going. Would he sign an offer sheet? And all that kind of stuff. So obviously he didn't really give a whole lot of information, but it's not a big surprise here that he would say that if no contract is in place by the time training camp starts, that he would not attend training camp. He did say there was a lot of risk involved with that, and it's something that he wouldn't do. No big surprise on that one. Now, a few days ago as well, we did get some information from Bob McKenzie, but as you know, a lot of these top hockey insiders are pretty much on vacation mode as of right now, but he did kind of chime in with a few updates, and here's what Bob McKenzie had to say just a few days ago. McKenzie says, as far as Marner, my view from afar is that it's probably close to or at the point where Toronto hopes an offer sheet is tendered. That would allow or force closure one way or another. Match the offer sheet or take the compensation, but it would be done. So coming from Bob McKenzie, who's basically the original hockey insider here, that leads me to think that obviously, as we've been talking about and what's been speculated, that there's a great deal of difference here between the two sides and that they're far apart in negotiations, and that the Leafs basically would like for this to be done and settled so that if an offer sheet came along, he would do that. That's exactly what we've seen happen to the Carolina Hurricanes and Sebastian Aho. We do know here that Don Waddell and owner Tom Dunder were quickly to come out and talk about the fact that they were going to match, and in some ways they felt relieved because it was all going to be over with within 7-day period. They'd have it matched, it would all be official, the contract would be signed, and they'd have the rest of their summer to tend to other business. And even though they may not have been totally pleased with the contract, of course publicly they didn't let on to that, but either way, it certainly solved the situation from dragging on and getting any further here into the summer and possibly having the player miss any time next year. Most of these high-profile restricted free agents that we're kind of all waiting for news to drop on are not arbitration eligible either when it comes to Marner and Rantanen and Brock Besser, Matthew Tkachuk, the guys in Winnipeg like Laine and Connor. They haven't had enough time in the NHL to have arbitration rights. So obviously these situations can't be resolved by an arbitrator. It's really up to the agent and the players' camp and the teams to sort this stuff out themselves. So unfortunately, we are in a situation here that we very well might see some of these situations really drag on through the entire summer, and we could have repeats of what we saw with William Nylander last year, and maybe have some holdouts here heading into training camp. It would not be a big shocker, but at the same time, once one of these guys takes the plunge and goes first, and we see a big contract go on one of these RFAs, that can be used as a comparable to help settle some of these other cases, and we might see like a domino effect where we might get a bunch of them close together soon after. So I guess we'll see here. But from the Maple Leafs perspective, did Brendan Shanahan actually, kind of veto the contract offer that Kyle Dubas wanted to present to Mitch Marner? Marner. Obviously, that's just a rumor based on the information from the Vancouver media, but you know what? There could be something to it. But if there is something to it, what could it be? What would Brendan Shanahan have stepped in and said, no, we can't do that. That's not good for the team. Too much risk involved, or whatever the case may be. So let's analyze that a little further. Now, first of all, let's take a quick peek here at the Toronto salary cap situation here as of right now. As you can see on the screen, the salary cap situation doesn't show a whole lot available for the Maple Leafs. They've spent a lot of money, made a lot of trades throughout this offseason. They currently have $3.765 million in salary cap space. Now, before you jump the gun here, keep in mind of a couple of easy things that the Leafs can do to really expand that. First of all, they have Nathan Horton, who's currently showing us on injury reserve. That's easily going to be moved to long-term injury reserve. Obviously, he's not going to be playing for the Leafs this year or ever again. And they have $5.3 million that they can get relief on. So you take the 3.765 that they already have, you add the 5.3, that sums up to just over $9 million. Of course, they have more than enough players on the roster. They have a few guys that are not requiring waivers. Probably these guys would be on entry-level deals. They're making around $700,000 or so. You take a couple of those guys, put them down in the minors, and just like that, you're over $10 million. So depending on what exact players they decide to put in the minors, they very well would end up somewhere around $10.5 million in salary cap space here based on the roster as it stands today. So they certainly can take that and expand it more here. And really, it's been speculated that the Marner contract could be somewhere around $10-11 million. Hard to say. Most of the inside sources indicate he wants Matthews' money, probably wants Matthews' term as well. And if that's the case, they're even going to be short with those moves to have enough space to sign Marner. We might have to see yet another transaction to free up a little bit more space here again. Now, of course, what are the other possibilities that Shanahan could have issues with? Well, if it's not the money, it's got to be the term. So if you take a look at the term options here, obviously Matthews signed a 5-year contract. Nylander signed a 6-year contract, but it was done a year prior. So now they're both going to be coming up for contract expiration here at the exact same time. So right now, as we speak, William Nylander and Austin Matthews will both be expiring and be unrestricted free agents the same summer. Obviously, a team like Toronto or any team around the NHL is not going to want to have too many of their top players coming up for contract renewal at the exact same time. Depending on cap increases over time and in managing all these contracts at once, it does put them at a certain degree of risk to be able to not be able to retain all these players. And it's really hard, I'm sure, to project out their team roster and their cap implications and all that 5 years down the road. I know that they have models that they look at to project the future, but 5 years out probably would be a little bit risky to be completely accurate here. But either way, to have Mitch Marner sign a contract with the same term to expire at the same time and have all three come up at one time, that would be terrible news for the Maple Leafs. Not to say that they would lose any or all of them, but it certainly would pose a lot more work than to be in the same predicament here all over again within such a short span to have all these guys coming up for renewal. So ultimately, giving a 5-year contract for Mitch Marner, which very well could be what he's looking for here, I can see why Shanahan would say, no, that's too much risk here for the team. But would Kyle Dubas actually be offering that and obviously want Shanahan's seal of approval here? I guess it's possible, but I guess like I said, we don't know exactly, the exact fine details of this negotiation. This is just, some rumors out of a Vancouver media source. So ultimately, like I said, 5 years takes him to expire at the same time as Matthews and Nylander, and where he wants Matthews' money, wouldn't be surprising to find out that he's asking for Matthews' term as well. Now, another thing to keep in mind is that 4 years really wouldn't be great for the Maple Leafs either. A 4-year term would march him directly to unrestricted free agency. In case you're unfamiliar with the rules, to become an unrestricted free agent, you either have to be 27 years old or have 7 pro seasons completed. He's got 3 so far. You do a 4-year term, marches him directly to being a very young, high-profile, unrestricted free agent at that time. So obviously, the Leafs are not going to want that ideally either, but at the same time, it probably would be more likely to happen than a 5-year deal so that he's not expiring at the exact same time here as Matthews or Nylander. Now, some people might think as well that a 4-year term might be okay with the Leafs because even though it's not ideal, like I said, it still gets him done in a different year than the other two guys, and he can then cash in sooner, and then he can set the bar for the next time around when Matthews and Nylander are going to be due for their next contracts, assuming everything's still, on track with them re-upping with the team for even bigger money, assuming their performance continues at where we're expected it to be here over the next number of years. So ideally, a 3-year term or a 6-year term would probably be the most preferable here for the Toronto Maple Leafs. A 3-year term gets him, under contract, gets him probably paid significantly well, but it still makes him a restricted free agent with arbitration rights at the end of that contract. Now, there is some risk to that 3-year term as well. Since he'd have arbitration rights, at least we know that if they have problems with negotiations at that point, that either the team or the player can file for arbitration. It guarantees the deal gets done. But if it goes to arbitration, it very well could end up being a 1-year deal, and then he gets marched to unrestricted free agency anyways. But at least there's a possibility there that they'd have ample time to negotiate an extension before it ever came to that. So a 3-year term would certainly be more preferable than a 4 or a 5. And of course, a 6-year term buys up a couple years of his unrestricted free agency, has him expire at a different time than Matthews and Nylander. I'm guessing as well that Marner's camp might not be fond of that term as well, because once again, Nylander and Matthews would be going ahead of him, kind of setting the bar. And, as we've heard a lot about the Marner's camps and about the disrespect and, not being treated as an equal amongst the top guys, whatever. I don't know exactly how he feels, but that's what a lot of people seem to say and think that what's going on with the negotiations here. But either way, there's lots of things that could be going on that Shanahan and the Leafs just absolutely could certainly not approve, which I understand. So when I came across this information on Twitter, I just found it very interesting, something we could talk about here and see, what do you think? Do you think Brendan Shanahan has had to step in and veto a contract offer for Marner? And what do you think makes the most sense from both sides that they can come to an agreement here and get this done? Obviously, they have very different philosophies. They have very different visions on how this needs to work, and they're far apart here. So I do think there's, unfortunately, a strong possibility this could drag on for quite some time, unless there's some kind of intervention like an offer sheet, which is also, reasonably doubtful as well. I don't think another team is going to want to offer sheet Mitch Marner unless it's, 6 to 7 year term, which apparently he doesn't seem to be interested in. So let me know your thoughts as well. When do you think we're finally going to see a Mitch Marner contract resolution here? Let me know your thoughts, and we'll continue the conversation down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you're notified every time we have new videos posted. We cover all 31 NHL teams around the NHL. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest breaking news. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you next time.